Hello everyone, I am back with another video. I am so excited to be doing this video in particular because I know many of you have been waiting for this video. So stay tuned, and when I come back, I'm going to show you how we're going to bind together this journal. Okay, so if all of you have been following me from the very start, you would have a journal put together similar to what mine is. I showed everything on how to build the signature pages, how to decorate some pages, how to decorate the cover, and now we are finally to that part of doing the cover, finishing it up, and binding our journal together. So one of the things that I did do that I'm going to show a little demo on is this larger, what would you call this? Like a larger snippet, I guess you could say. And I'm going to show you how we're going to incorporate that into the binding of our book. So I will do a little demo to show you how I did create that. It was really simple. It was just using some leftover trims, laces, and then I did do a little stamping on muslin down below with one of my new stamps. So I'm going to show you a little demo on that. We're going to just kind of take off with our cover from where we left off, and we decorated the front, so now we're on this inner section here. And so one of the first things that I'm going to do is I want to make sure that my measurements are good. Now, you all might have different measurements than me. If you've followed me from the very start, then you probably will have similar measurements because we built our signatures according to the workshop. If you are just now joining me and you already have a journal made, you're going to want to make sure that you have your measurements, according to the signature pages that you did. Now mine are going to be around 15.5 inches in width and then 9 inches in height. And I did allow for 1/4 inch extra on each side of my cover there. Now as far as what you choose, as far as fabric or felt for your cover, that is pretty much up to you. Main thing is you just want to make sure that you have your piece of fabric or your pieces of felt measured appropriately, to your signature pages. Okay, so I chose 2 pieces of felt, so I'm going to sew my 2 pieces together, and then what I'm going to do is for the inside part, I'm going to put down some upholstery material. Now the reason that I'm putting upholstery material on the inside here is, well, of course, the way that the felt is right now, it's not very pretty. So of course I want to cover that up. The other reason that I'm doing that is because I want my soft cover to be more durable and not as flimsy. So I picked up this heavier upholstery material from Hobby Lobby. It was just a remnant piece that I picked up, and I'm going to put that on the inside of my journal. Now I'm going to have to glue it down because I've already decorated my front cover. So one thing that you might want to do if you're going to make another one of these, or if you haven't gotten to this point yet of decorating your cover, is you want to sew everything down first, your inside and your felt if you're using felt, or your 2 pieces of fabric, however you want to incorporate that. Sew it all down first and then decorate your cover. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch gears a little bit here and show all of you how I did that larger snippet. And I wanted to show you really quick the lace kit. I'm going to do another lace kit. It was a huge hit. I've had so many of you ask me to do another lace kit, so I've put together another assortment of laces. These ones are going to be a little different than the first kit that I released, but I plan on doing a lot more than I did the first time. I just did not dream that they would sell the way that they did. And I love trim, and I love to be able to offer it to all of you at a great price. And so yes, I will be offering a second lace kit. I will have the pre-order available, so make sure that you grab yours so you get your lace kit as soon as possible. Okay, so let's make that larger snippet. Now I just have an assortment of leftover trims, lace, and I might have a little bit of bling here and there that I might add. So I have my little baggie of, little buttons and all sorts of goodies. And then I have some muslin that I'm going to be stamping on. And I have my digital printout. This is from my Fashion Bazaar digital collection, and I will have the link down below. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to cut around her. You don't need to take any sort of measurements or anything like that. We just kind of want to frame around her. So I cut down to about, you know, her shoulder, elbow, about down to her elbow, and cut a rectangular shape. Again, I just kind of want to cut it so I can frame around her. And I didn't want it too large because I wanted all of that wonderful muslin, stamped muslin, and trims to hang down. So the next thing that I'm going to do is just cut some strips of muslin, and these are like really thin strips of muslin, and I tear it. And the reason I want to tear it is because I really want that distressed, rugged edge, and I'm going to just take these little pieces and create a frame around my image there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to sew around, and you know, I wasn't too perfect when I sewed around there. I just quickly went with the sewing machine, my sewing machine, and just, you know, zipped around it, making sure that everything was attached. And so now what I'm going to do is tear another strip of muslin. This will be the strip of muslin that I'm going to stamp my design onto. And I'm going to tear about a 2.5 to 3 inch wide strip, and then as far as the length, that is about, I would say, 8 to 9 inches in length. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my stamp over it and stamp it first. I'd rather have too much to stamp on than too little. So if your piece is a little larger, you know, that would probably be a good thing, and then you can go back and trim it down as you like. And then I like to pull the edges just to kind of give it, again, that really rugged, distressed edge. And now we get to stamp. So this is my latest stamp release from Carabelle, and I'm going to use that stamp with the key and the flowers up above, and I'm just going to use that portion of the stamp to start off with, and I'm going to be stamping it with the black archival ink, but you can choose like maybe plum or a brown color, whatever color you like, but I'm going to use the jet black. And again, I'm just going to ink the portion of the stamp that has the flowers up at top and the key down at the bottom, and you'll be able to see me do that here. I want to make sure that I have a lot of ink on my stamp because we are stamping on fabric and not paper. So the way that the ink absorbs onto the fabric is different than how it would be with paper, and it requires a lot more ink. And you're also going to want to make sure that you hold it down onto your fabric probably for about 40-50 seconds and put some good pressure down, making sure that that ink is getting, you know, down through those fibers, and that you have a good impression of the stamp. You don't want it to be where you only get half of the stamp design down, because then you'll have to redo it, and we don't want to have to redo this. So just make sure you have enough pressure to make sure, you know, that that ink's really getting on there and you have a good stamped impression. And as you can see, everything got stamped onto my muslin. It is a little faded, but it's going to look that way. And so, you know, if it's not really dark and you want it darker, I'm going to show you how you can make it darker using a black pen. But for now, we're just going to stamp that other section and stamp it above where we did that first impression. So just kind of, gonna collage that onto my strip of muslin there. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect in any sort of way. I just wanted a little bit of the design to come through, to have a complete kind of collaged look to my muslin there. And the top section of that muslin is going to be covered, so you don't really have to put too much attention, at that upper section of your muslin there. And I'm happy with the way that that looks. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a smaller, thinner piece of muslin. I'm just going to rip another piece of muslin here. And I decided to use that smaller stamp. And this is the first time I'm really getting to see this stamp stamped on something. So it's exciting for me. It's one thing to design it, and you see it when it's all digitized, and then you get actually see the physical stamp itself. And now I'm actually going to get to see it stamped onto something for the first time. And I was really happy with the way that these designs turned out. So I hope you all like them too if you've had a chance to purchase them. And I'm going to leave this smaller strip just stamped in the black. I'm not going to color this smaller strip, but I am going to color the larger strip, and I'm going to use the Arteza fabric markers. I love these markers. I'm going to leave a link down below on where you can purchase them from. And just so you know, I am an affiliate of Arteza, and truly I love their products, and you're gonna see why I love their products. The one thing that I love about their brush markers and their fabric markers, as you'll be able to see, is they have a wonderful fine point. So you're really able to, do detail work. The other thing that I love is they blend beautifully. So when you add water and you mix colors, you get a beautiful watercolor effect, and everything just blends beautifully. And so some of the colors that you see me pulling out there are some pinker tones, creams, and I'll probably add in some blues and purples as well. And again, if you don't have these markers and you don't want to make a purchase, you could maybe try using watercolors or using acrylic paints or fabric paints, whatever you might have on hand, or you might just choose to not color them and just leave them stamped black. Okay, so the first color that I'm going to use is this lighter blue color. And I'm just going to lay down some color, not really try to be overly perfect. I'm going to focus mainly on the base of the flower, adding a little bit at the top of the flower. I want to make sure that I stay in the lines and kind of just follow the shape of the flower. But again, not trying to be too perfect. I just want to lay some color down with these markers. Okay, the next color that I'm going to use is this darker blue shade, kind of a denim blue color. And I'm going to mainly focus at the bottom sections of the flower and where some of the flowers, intersect. And again, just laying down a little bit of color. And when I'm doing this, I'm actually kind of just placing little dots in the center is really all I'm doing there, just really lightly. And now I'm just taking a little bit of water and just blending everything. Again, not really trying to be too perfect, just keeping it really loose, just wanting to get some of that color, spread around that flower with the water. And as you can see with these brush markers, these fabric markers, they're just, they're so easy to work with. You can actually pull some of the color or fade some of the color with the water. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just kind of taking a little bit of water and just pulling it to add different variations of those blue tones and that lighter blue tone that I first applied on the flower there. And this is just something really fun. It's very relaxing. So, you know, if you've had a really stressful day, yeah, just stamp some fabric, color away. I cannot recommend these fabric markers enough. I love them. They're so much fun to work with. And it's something different. You know, it's one thing to color on paper, but it's a whole different feel and vibe when you're actually coloring on fabric. Okay, and I decided that I'm going to take some of my acrylic white paint. This is just one technique that I love to do. I do it with everything. I think I'm always pulling out my acrylic white paint, and I'm just going to brighten up some of that area, just again to add some variation to my flowers. And I'm just kind of dotting on the white to the petals there. Okay, now I'm going to take one of my pinker tones here and I'm going to color that rose. And so again, just same technique. I'm just gonna lightly hit some color down on the petals. And again, not trying to be too perfect, kind of following the lines that I stamped on there. And then just applying a little water. And I always like to start a little bit lighter and then go with some of the darker colors. And here I'm introducing a darker green color. Definitely want to color those leaves and make those stand out a little more. And as you can see, again, you know, you'll hear me say this over and over, I'm not trying to be too perfect. I'm just laying some color down is basically all I'm doing here. You know, the main thing is just have fun with it. And the design, the stamp design, it'll kind of just all come together, as you'll see. Even if you think that it's looking kind of sloppy or kind of messy, I'm going to show you ways to kind of just refine everything, add in a little bit of detail, and you know, it's all going to come together and it's going to look great. And as you can see, I'm taking some of the green and I'm kind of pulling just a little bit of the color into the blue and the pink of the flowers, just to kind of tie all those colors together. And now I'm going to start working on the key. Now I know that the flowers really look kind of messy and sloppy, but again, we're going to go back and we're going to refine some of those details, so don't worry too much about it at this point. Okay, so what you see me doing here is I am taking black and I just want to go really light and just a little bit of it in certain areas of the key. And then I'm going to go over it with a golden yellow color and then a burnt orange color and then a medium brown color. And then I'm going to take the water and blend those colors all together so it looks like a golden antique key. And again, I am not trying to be really perfect here. I just want to mainly get those colors. You know, the key, I want this antique golden color, and some of my flowers I wanted to be blue, and of course I wanted my rose to have a pinker shade. So that's mainly what I'm thinking of when I'm coloring this. I don't expect it to look super realistic by any means, and you know, we're painting on fabric, so it's just to give a concept of colors onto our strip of muslin here. Okay, so now I'm taking a darker, brighter pink, and I just really want to make that color pop. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking little dots of this pink and going around each one of the flowers. And when I take the water, it's going to make that pink just kind of bleed in sections, and again, just bring this vibrancy and color to my strip of fabric here. And the other thing I want to do is take my white acrylic paint and add in those highlights. I'm just adding little dots of this here and there just to kind of brighten everything up. As you see, when you add that white acrylic paint, it just blends in with those markers perfectly. It just kind of makes everything stand out a little bit more. Okay, so now I'm taking this vibrant, darker blue, and I'm going to do my color up above. I did take a little bit of the lighter blue that was left on my brush and just kind of lightly went over it first, and then I took that darker blue, and as you can see, just added a little to the center of the flower, and I'm just taking and patting the water onto that flower, and it's just got this pop of this vibrant blue color coming out. And then I'm going to do the same to the flowers down below, but I'm just going to add a little dot here and there in the center of each flower. Again, just to kind of have that contrast between my lighter highlights and then my darker tones. And then keeping this in mind, I'm going to take a deeper, darker magenta color and just lightly go over some of that script area where the postmark is, and then take my water brush and go over it to create the illusion that we spent all this time you know, coloring in that script area and that postmark area. It's just to give this illusion of color here and there, and you know, that we took all this time to finely detail and color those sections of this stamp. But I'm just, as you can see, I'm just loosely going over these sections. And I'm going to take, it's almost a midnight blue shade. You could use black, but I wanted to have it not quite as stark as black, so I chose midnight blue. And I'm just going to go around some of those areas where it's going to be heavily shaded. Again, I want that contrast. I want those really deep, dark tones, and then I want some really vibrant and light tones. And then I'm just going to finish off with my fine black liner pen, just to bring back a little bit of detail here and there, and then it will be done. And you know, I love the way that this turned out. I think it's, you know, it's got that shabby chic feel to it, and I love the watercolor effect. I love these fabric markers. They're so easy to work with. Again, you know, I could have spent more time and really added in tons more detail and gave it a much more realistic and defined look, but I don't think it was necessary, especially for the certain sort of project we're doing. And this was something that was just meant to kind of, you know, kick back, have fun, do a little bit of coloring, relax a little bit, and just really enjoy the project as a whole. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take some distress ink. I haven't used my distress inks in quite a while. I'm usually using my distress oxides, but I wanted to use the ink on this muslin. And I'm going to use 3 or 4 different shades. I'm using worn lipstick, peeled paint, vintage photo, and I believe the blue shade is salty ocean. And as you can see, I just kind of ran those colors on that larger strip there, just going over it lightly, just to help give it more of that vintage feel. And then to finish our portrait of Our Lady off here, I'm just taking some white acrylic paint and just going around my framed muslin areas. Okay, so now I'm taking a patterned piece of fabric. Again, I just tore a strip of it, kind of the same size as my larger strip of muslin, and I'm just distressing those edges. And then I'm going to sew this to my muslin strips. So you can see here where I sewed everything, and I kind of had it sewn so the strips were layered across one another, and then had my smaller strip kind of sticking out a little further from the other two. And I left a lot of the strings. I just kind of really liked that raggedy look, that shabby chicness that it has to it. Okay, so now we're going to start layering our little bits of lace and trim. And you know, you could do this any which way you choose. You might have different laces than I have. So, you know, this is where you can just kind of be creative, have fun, just kind of play around with the trim until you see something you like, and then you can glue it down or sew it down. But you're just going to build those layers of your bits and pieces of trims, lace, and so forth. And I'm going to show you here a little demo of how I did it. Okay, so I hope you all enjoyed creating that larger snippet with me and coloring and seeing that whole process. So now we're going back to our cover, and you can see where I took my two pieces of felt and I sewed them together, and I did have one little area there. You can see where it kind of snagged, my felt did, and it's not perfect there, but it's going to be covered with lace. And so it doesn't have to be too perfect anyway. And that's one thing, if you ever make a mistake, on most things, you can usually cover it with lace. And it'll make, lace makes everything look good. Okay, so what you see me doing here is I am taking my piece of upholstery fabric, and I had cut that to size, and I'm just gluing that down. Now, as I stated previously, if you're preferring to sew your pieces of fabric together, you would want to sew those first and then decorate your cover. But because the way that I did this video, I had decorated my cover first, but if I was gonna go back and do another one of these, I would definitely probably go back and sew versus gluing, but either option is perfectly fine. Some people prefer to glue things down, other people prefer to sew things down, so I'm going to leave that to you. You don't have to do it exactly like I'm doing it. You might even choose just to use one piece of heavier upholstery fabric and not even use the felt. You could even use placemats. There's some quilted placemats that you can get, maybe you can find some at the thrift store. Those also would work wonderfully here. Or maybe you just have fabric, again, that you just hate and you don't know what to do with it. This is a great project for doing that because, we decorate that front cover, and now with the back section, it's going to be covered mostly in lace. So just some ideas on other things that you could do if you're trying to recreate this cover that we're making here. So what I'm doing now is I'm just taking my lace, and I wanted to cut off sections of it so it would go around some of those metal embellishments on that front cover there. And I didn't want to waste anything. I wanted to also take pieces of it so I could layer with it later on, and you'll see how I do that. And now you can see I have my lace all cut to size. I did have to pull that edge there so I could get that lace to go underneath the top layer from where my front cover was. So, again, if I had to go back and recreate another one of these, I might do the back section first and then work it towards that front cover and just do the decorating of my front cover last if I had to go back and redo this. And that's one of the things when I'm creating these, it's a learning process. So at least you have the ability to watch this, and then you can make notes and go back and do it probably to where it's a little bit easier even than what I'm showing you here in this video. Okay, so I'm layering my additional pieces of laces. Now these laces that you're seeing here, these come in the second lace kit. So for all of you who got the first kit, you're going to be really happy to know there is a second lace kit, and I might even have a third one available. So I might do two different kits. And so these laces that you're seeing me use, those are going to be in that second lace kit, and I will have the link down below. So if you're wanting to order one, make sure you get your pre-order in. The pre-orders are important because that gives me a good idea of how much to order, and it also allows you to get your kit much faster. So if you loved the lace kit, yes, make sure you get your pre-order in, and I will have those probably to you within the next few weeks. Now, what you see me doing here is I'm just putting my signatures together, and I want to build 3 signatures. So I'm just kind of going through all the pages and then figuring out how I want to build my signatures. This is pretty much up to you. You can put yours together however which way you like. I still have some work that I want to do in mine. And so again, with this being a temporary binding, I'm not too concerned because I'll be able to remove the signatures if I need to and rework them later on. But yeah, you can You can build your signature pages however which way you want to here, or you can try to follow along as best as you can with how I built mine. The main thing is that you have 3 signatures put together, and each one of my signatures, I would say I have about 5 to 6 pages in each signature. And again, like I said, I'm going to show you 2 ways that you can do the binding. There's a lot of variations that you can do with this binding. The thing that I loved the most about this is that there's only 2 holes that we'll have to stitch through, so it makes it really easy, makes it really quick, and that's the one thing that I loved about this binding. The other things that I show you, again, you can make variations based on what I do. Okay, so here are my 3 signature pages that I put together, and I'm just going to flip through them so you can kind of see how I put mine together. And again, I do have work that I would still like to do on some of the pages. Some of these, I guess, might have more like 7 or 8 pages in each signature. But you know, you can do yours however which way that you like. You could have maybe 5 pages or 6 pages in your signatures. You could even do like 1 signature. You don't even have to do 3 signatures. You could do maybe 4 signatures. It's up to you. This will work for however many signature pages you decide to do. So this is really easy. As you can see, all I'm doing is I'm taking my smaller hole punch and I'm just making 1 punch at the top and 1 punch at the bottom. And when I do this, I'm going up as far as my hole punch will allow me to go, and then making a punch. And again, I'm just doing that 1 hole at the bottom and 1 hole at the top. It is just super easy. Now you could do 2-3 pages at a time. I was just doing 1 at a time for demo purposes. And also, if you're going to want to use like ribbon or something that's a little wider, you're going to definitely want to use your larger hole punch. I'm just going to use twine, so that's why I'm using my smaller hole punch. So I'm going to do this to every page within my signature, and now I'm going to get ready to stitch it onto this crocheted lace. Now you could use something totally different. You do not have to do exactly as I do here, because you might not even have this sort of lace and you might not have any sort of crocheted lace. So you could use chipboard, you could use cardstock, you could use heavier upholstery fabric, you could use any sort of heavier types of fabrics. That choice is strictly up to you, and you know, you can be able to do exactly as I'm doing here if you don't have this exact crocheted trim lace. I will have that lace in the second lace kit, by the way. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just taking and running my papers through the needle, starting at the inside bottom part of my signatures, and then I'm just going to thread that through. And I want to make sure that I have enough of a tail to be able to tie it off after I'm done stitching. And then I'm going to go over about 1/4 of an inch from the edge of my lace and about 1/2 of an inch up, and just stitch that through my lace there. And I did want to be sure that I had that going through the section of my crocheted lace where it was knit really tight so it could hold my twine. I didn't want it to be super loose, so you know, I just made sure that I stitched it through that tighter knit part of my trim there. And then I'm just going to run it through the top section of my lace, again going about 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the lace and about 1/2 of an inch down from the top of the lace, and then running my signature pages through the needle there. And then I will have my first stitch complete. And again, because I am probably going to go back and do some more work in my signatures, I'm just going to tie this off with a simple knot. But if you have your signature pages to where they're good, they're all done, and you're good with it, you don't think you're going to make any other changes, when you tie it off, you can apply a dot of glue to make sure that that holds in place. And you can actually put a dot of glue right at the top and bottom where the twine is ran through, where those holes are, just to kind of secure that in place as well. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just pulling each end, making sure it's pretty snug, and then I'm going to just do a simple knot. And again, I want to make sure that I have it pulled, you know, pretty tight. Not so tight that I rip the pages, but I do want to have it pretty snug there. And then I'm just going to trim off any excess twine there, and our first signature is stitched onto our lace, as you can see. And moving forward into this project, you're going to see how we're going to reinforce this even more. So as you can see here, I'm just trimming off a little more of my crocheted lace. I had a little long at the top there, and there it is. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our second signature. So again, I'm starting at the bottom, and I have thread everything through all my pages through my second signature there. And I'm only going through my signature. I'm not going through the lace at this time. I'm just going through my signature. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to have to line my signature up with my first signature so I know where I want to stitch on my crocheted lace there. Now I'm sure y'all heard my dog. I don't know what he's growling at. I have no idea. It's probably something on TV. Oh yes, I love my Chihuahua. He's my little buddy. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and just repeat what I did the first time and stitch my twine through my lace there at the top. And it's going to be spaced, I would say, about 1/4 of an inch from where I did my first stitch. So about over 1/4 of an inch, I would say. Again, it does not have to be perfect. I just want to make sure that I'm able to get all 3 of my signatures onto this piece of crocheted lace and just trying to space everything out as evenly as possible. Oh, my Chihuahua, he wants to play. Like, oh, I need my husband. He's not around at the moment. I have already re-edited this so many times. Doesn't he sound sad? He sounds so sad. And the crazy thing is, you know, when I go to re-edit this and I have to play it back, he hears himself on here and then he starts crying because he's hearing himself crying, and oh, yeah. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a clean video edit here, but I'm going to do my best, everyone. Okay, so we have our second signature stitched here, and again, just going to tie this off, and then we'll work on our last signature. And again, you can do 2 signatures, 3 signatures, 4 signatures. Just make sure that when you're attaching your signatures to whatever material it is, whether it be chipboard or heavier fabric or a crocheted trim like what I'm doing, that it is wide enough, or you know, that it's enough to support the number of signatures that you're going to have. Okay, and as you can see, this is looking really good so far. Everything's lined up nicely, and so we'll be ready to stitch on our last signature. So again, starting at the bottom, I'm just going to thread everything through the bottom of my signature there, and then once I have it all thread through, I'm going to want to line that up with my second signature and stitch it onto that bottom section of my crocheted lace. And again, you could be using chipboard, you could be using a heavier fabric or a different sort of trim. It doesn't have to be this exact crocheted lace that I'm using. This works on pretty much whatever material you want to choose, as long as it's a heavier type of fabric or a heavier trim, something that's durable enough that can support your signatures. Okay, so now I'm just taking my signature and I want to put it next to my second signature because I want to make sure that when I am stitching my signature onto my crocheted lace here, that I'm not spreading my stitches so far apart on my lace that I'm going to have huge gaps. I want my signatures to be close together, so that was one thing to keep in mind when you are stitching, whether it be on your chipboard or heavier trim or heavier fabric, that you do line your signatures and kind of have them backed against one another before you stitch it onto your lace, to make sure that, you know, all your stitches are close enough together but far enough apart so when you do have this completely stitched, you know, you can open the pages freely, but yet you're not going to have huge gaps in your signatures. I hope that made sense, and I'm going to show you how my stitches look here once I have this all stitched through. Okay, so we have it all stitched together. So now we need to take our stitched signatures and attach them to our cover. Now again, I'm going to do a temporary sort of binding, but I'm also going to show you where you can make it more permanent. So if you have everything done with your signatures and you know this is how you like it, and maybe you want to send this journal off to somebody, you want it to be bound so everything's in there nice and secure, I will show you how you can make it more permanent as opposed to temporary, which is going to be the method that I'm going to do. When I decorated this cover, I did apply a coat of Mod Podge to that front cover section where I had my print. I did print this on 32-pound white copy paper, so you know, I just wanted to make note of that in case you were following along in this workshop and you decided to decorate your cover. Okay, so what I'm showing you is I had some leftover strips of my upholstery fabric, and I cut these down to about 6 inches in length, and they were about 1.5 inches to 2 inches wide. And what you see me doing here is I'm just tucking these underneath my crocheted lace. Now I'm not going to do anything at this point with it. I'm just kind of eyeballing everything to see how this is all going to work, because again, this is a new binding technique, and I'm just at this point, you just see me trying to figure out how I'm going to attach all of this together. And I really liked the shabbiness of it, you know, kind of that look. So I figured that I was somehow, some way going to use these strips to attach them to my cover. So, you know, I wanted to show you this so you could see my thought process on how I kind of came up with this. And we are going to incorporate it here onto our cover. The next thing that I thought of doing is taking some of that lace and running it through, or having the strips run through it to kind of clean off some of those edges and just give it more of a finished look. Now you could do something similar. You could do any sort of decorative trim and use that to clean off the edges of whatever you're using for your strips. You might choose to use muslin, you might choose to use some other fabric, but whatever you're doing, you know, you could do something similar as I'm doing. Now, the lace and trim that I'm showing, and I mentioned this earlier, this will be in that second lace kit. So if you're wanting to use a lot of the same laces and trims that I'm using, you'd be able to pick up that second lace kit and have that option to use, you know, a lot of the same trims and laces that I'm using. And again, I will have the information listed below on where you can pre-order that lace kit. So I'm just taking those strips again and threading it through my snippets of lace trim. And on this right section here, this right side, I am going to have it so this side is permanent. So it's going to be secured down permanently. The left side I'm going to leave as an option for it to be more on a temporary sort of basis, so I can pull out my signature pages and be able to replace things if I want to. Maybe I decide that I don't want to use these signatures, maybe I want to add, maybe I want to take some out. It'll leave me that option to do it. So I'm going to show you that later on in this video. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to glue down just the right edge of our strips, and we want to go as close to that right edge as possible. And then we're going to just glue the edges of our lace trim that touches that right edge of our strips of upholstery fabric or whatever it is that we're using. So just want to do that right edge. It's very important that you only do the right edge and you don't glue the whole thing down, because then you will not be able to slide your signature pages over. And you'll be able to see me do this as I continue on here. I did decide to take another snippet of some lace trim and just another decorative element. So I'm going to also just kind of stick that underneath that little bit of upholstery fabric there. Again, this was just to add another little decorative element. You don't have to do this. You might choose to do this a whole different way. The main thing with this is those strips, and that you just have that right edge of those strips glued down. You have them secured down. That's the most important thing in doing this. So, you know, whatever it is that you're using for your strips, I chose to use the heavier upholstery fabric just because I knew it would be nice and sturdy and durable. And I probably would advise using a heavier sort of durable fabric to use for your strips, because you are going to be sliding your signatures across, and they're going to be what's really holding everything in place and reinforcing everything. So you do want to make sure that that fabric that you're using for your strips there is a durable, heavier sort of fabric. The lace and the trim and all of that going over those strips, that is just a decorative element, just something to kind of clean up those rough, harsh edges from my upholstery fabric strips. And again, I can't stress this enough. When you're gluing this down, only glue the right edges of those upholstery fabric strips or whatever it is that you used for your strips. Okay, so I'm just finishing up this last one here, and then I will have my right side all nice and secure, and I really like the look of it. I think it's really pretty. It's different. This is my first soft cover journal that I've ever done, so really different for me, but I'm really loving it. I love how shabby it is. I love that. And it's kind of, you know, the edges are all kind of raggedy and distressed. I love that look. You might choose something totally different than what I'm doing. You might decide to sew your edges and have them all nice and neat, because I know everybody has a different style, different tastes. So, you know, you could do these variations according to your tastes and your likes. I am going to apply some more trim just to that right edge of my cover just to clean it up a little more. I mean, I do like it a little raggedy looking and all of that, don't get me wrong, but that one edge was still kind of bothering me. So yeah, I decided to take and add another piece of trim to that right edge there. And I love this trim. This is actually one of my favorite trims. I love it because it has that vintage look to it, and it's so versatile. You could use it in just about any project that you're making, regardless of what theme it might be. Okay, so now I'm taking another strip of trim and I'm going to use this for the closure of my journal. So I'm just taking and tucking a little bit of it underneath that middle upholstery fabric strip that you see there, and then under the right side of the trim that I just glued down, and then I'm just gonna glue the middle section there. I want that secured onto my journal cover fully, so I don't really want it moving around, so I am gonna glue the whole thing down. Okay, so now that we have the one side of our closure done, I'm going to take and add some trim to that right edge of my front cover, again, just to kind of clean up some of those edges a little bit. Okay, so I have my trim laid down. Now I'm going to work on the inside left part of our journal cover here. And this is the part where you might want to do some variation. So my thought here was to use this larger snippet, if that's what you want to call it, to secure down the left side of our signature pages here. So we have our strips coming through, and what I'm going to do is create a band on the back of our larger snippet and run those strips through the back of that and see if that will help secure everything in place on a temporary basis. So let's just go ahead and follow along and we'll see how this all comes together. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I have these two leftover pieces of my crochet trim, and I'm going to glue those together to make my strip a little bit longer because I need that length there, and I didn't want to waste, so I was just trying to use some leftover stuff that I had, but you can just use one longer, heavier duty fabric or like the crochet trim like what I'm using. And then I'm going to attach this to the back of my larger snippet. And you want to be sure that you only glue the top and the bottom. Don't do like I did and try to glue the whole thing down to the back of your larger snippet. Otherwise you won't be able to run the strips through. So you only glue the top and the bottom of that larger crocheted piece of lace or whatever sort of material it is you decide to use. And then I'm going to take that other piece of trim that I was using for my closure, and I'm going to glue that down onto that left side of my cover there. I want to be sure that I do glue the whole piece down onto my cover because I don't want that to move around. So you do want to glue that all the way down. And then I'm just going to want to let everything kind of dry, let the glue cure a little bit before we move on. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is where those 3 strips are that we created. And again, I used heavier upholstery fabric, but you can use whatever you like. I'm going to take some more of my leftover crocheted trim and I'm going to glue that onto each one of those strips because I want to make that strip a little longer on the left side, just to make it so it's more secure. So when we run that through the back of our larger snippet here, it will hold it down in place better. Now again, this method that I'm showing you, this is to do a temporary binding. So you can take your signature pages out and you can replace them if you choose. You could add to it if you choose. And that is the one thing that I love about doing this method. Now, if you're wanting to do a more permanent sort of binding, at this point, instead of adding that crocheted lace, you're just going to take your strip and you're going to fold it over onto the left side of your cover there. So you're just basically taking your strip and gluing it down onto the cover. And you would do that for both sides. You'd want to glue the entire strip down onto your cover. And then it would be a permanent binding. So, you know, you could do either option. It's up to you. It's just a really easy binding method to do, I think. And you know, I love doing it this way just to have the flexibility. And again, you saw I still have work to do on my signature pages, so I want to be able to have the option to take signatures out and switch things around later on. And so this worked really good for being able to do that. Now you're going to notice that I'm gluing down these strips of my leftover crocheted lace, and it's a different width than my upholstery fabric strips. And the reason I did this is because I found that when I run it through the back of my larger snippet, it kind of catches onto the back of where we glued that crochet trim on the back of the larger snippet there. And so having that texture from the crocheted trim on my strips and the texture from the crocheted trim on the back of my snippet, it just catches. It doesn't, you know, slide smoothly back and forth. It catches on that texture. So that's something to keep in mind when you're creating these strips and you get to this part. Make sure that when you go to lengthen those strips, you're using something with a lot of texture because you want it to kind of catch naturally onto the back of your larger snippet. So you want both the backing of your large snippet and that additional length that you're going to add to your strips. You want them both to have this texture so they kind of catch onto one another. And it's really kind of neat how it works because you'll see me tug on it and it will not move. It actually does catch. It just kind of, you know, those fibers and everything catch onto one another. Okay, so that is it. We are now done with our journal, and I'm just going to show you how it kind of all comes together, how you can take it apart, and we will be done with this journal workshop series. I hope you all enjoyed this. If you have any questions, which I'm sure I'm going to get questions, but please be sure to comment, and I will do my best to answer all your questions if you have any. I'm expecting questions because this is a new technique and it's the first time, like I said, that I've ever done a soft cover journal. It's the first time that I've ever done anything close to this sort of binding, so I would not be surprised if there's a lot of questions, and again, I'm more than happy to answer any that you may have. But I really love the way that this journal turned out. I mean, I just think it is gorgeous, it is shabby, and it is definitely chic. So let me know how you all loved this workshop series. Please comment, please let me know. And I'll be back with some more videos. I have a lot in the works. I have some iron orchid stuff coming up, and I'm going to combine it with some Dollar Tree items, just some fun Christmas decor that I'm going to do. And then I have my mom's kit that I hope I can show and share with all of you very soon. I know she said she's finishing it up, so hopefully that will be available very soon. And yeah, just if you haven't already yet, please hit the subscribe button. You know, this lets me know that I'm on the right track and that you're enjoying the videos. I try really hard to provide good content in my videos. I know that some of my earlier videos, and I've said this before, they are terrible. I mean, they are really bad. If you're ever having trouble sleeping and you know you want to put yourself to sleep, just watch some of my older videos. Yeah, I'm very laid back and they're soothing, but I wish I could go back and redo a lot of them. Anyway, I'm trying really hard to produce better videos and also do more videos. And speaking of more videos, be sure to catch me the night before Halloween, or I guess you could watch on Halloween, the Craft With Me video where I'm going to be working out my Harry Potter journal, and I'm probably going to treat myself to maybe a pumpkin latte or caramel corn. My mom, oh, she's got a really good recipe for caramel corn. I might make some of that, and of course I'll have Harry Potter on, and it's just going to kind of be a fun night. And I thought that, you know, if any of you don't have many plans or many trick-or-treaters, or you don't have much going on, what a great night to just kind of take a project that you might want to work on. Maybe it's this, you know, and you can just kind of sit back and craft with me. So I will have that video up the night before Halloween, and I'll probably have it available or launching. I mean, I would like to have it available around 3, 4 in the afternoon. It might be a little later, 5, 6, but I will have it up the night before Halloween. So that will be coming up. And again, I have my iron orchid design projects and some Dollar Tree items. Actually, I'm going to do a Dollar Tree Christmas haul because I don't normally do hauls, but this one I'm going to do because I grabbed so many really cool things from Dollar Tree this year. I mean, they had some really neat stuff, so I thought it'd be fun to kind of share some of those things with all of you. Okay, so I was showing you while I was talking how everything came apart, put it back together, and now I'm just kind of showing you my signature pages and how I have everything put together so far. Again, I have a lot more work that I would like to eventually do in this journal, but this will give you an idea of how you can build some of those signature pages, or the pages that you've already created and you're not sure how you might want to put your signatures together. Hopefully this will give you some sort of idea of how you can do that. And as you can see, I added in quite a few of the coffee stained papers. I have some white sections here that I'm definitely going to want to do some work on. Maybe add some lined papers too, some stenciling. Maybe I might even save it for just sketching. That's always nice with some of your journals to leave some white pages if you want to do some sort of sketching, if you like to do that. And of course, I always have a lot of journal spaces. So I have my lined papers and I have those layers, those flips to where you can journal things underneath. And right here, I'm going to have to glue that down to create my little pockets for all of my ephemera and journal cards that I want to tuck down through there. So I will have to do that. And here's one of the old ledger papers that I created using the Dollar Tree penmanship paper. And that was a fun project. I love that. I would love to do just a lot more papers like that. And I did do a video on it, so you could catch a video and learn how to create those. And then I also did a video on this paper bag, and I need to finish that as well. It was supposed to be a mini paper bag journal. And then I have my little flap here. And again, I'll have to finish off my envelope. That's why it's all loosely in here, because I plan on taking it out and finishing up these little sections that I still have to do. I loved this. I just created these little tabs here. And then you could see where I stamped on the back of them and just used up some of that extra lined paper that I had. Loved that. I'd love to do that technique again, maybe on a larger scale. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. Really liked the way that that turned out there. And so, yeah, I just have so much to share with all of you. And in regard to the newsletter, I'm going to have all my Black Friday promos and all of that, which will be coming up before you know it. It's almost here. I can't believe it. I think I say that pretty much every year. I think everybody does. Christmas comes and it goes and it's here and it's gone and then it's here again. It's just time. Time goes by so fast. Anyway, I'm just going to show you the rest of my pages in my journal here, and I'll be back again very soon. If anything, I will be back the night before Halloween doing that craft with me, working out of my Harry Potter journal, having some yummy treats, a pumpkin latte and caramel corn or carameled apples. And so I hope you all will join me for that. I really hope you all loved this video. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you got some great ideas. I'd love to hear if you decided to go with the temporary sort of binding like I showed in this video, or if you decided to make it more permanent and you glue those strips down instead. I'd love to hear, you know, if you're creating a journal like mine. Yeah, just let me know. I'd be so curious to see what all of you ended up doing. So with that, I think I'm just going to put on some music and let you see the rest of what I did in my journal here. I just have a little bit more to show you, and hopefully I will catch you all back for the next video. Thank you so much for watching.